You know that feeling when you cram for a test? You absolutely ace it, and then a week later, it's all gone? It really makes you stop and think, what does it actually mean to learn something? Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most influential ideas ever created for understanding that very process, Bloom's taxonomy. Let's dig into what it is, where it came from, and why after all these years, it's still such a big deal. So yeah, let's just start right there with that giant question. How do you know when you've really, truly gotten a handle on a topic? Is it enough to just memorize a bunch of definitions? Or is it something deeper, like being able to take that knowledge and create something brand new with it? This is the exact puzzle a group of educators set out to solve almost 70 years ago. All right, picture this. It's the 1950s, and an educational psychologist named Benjamin Bloom and his team, they see this problem. Teachers, professors, educators, they didn't really have a shared vocabulary to talk about what they wanted students to achieve. Their goal was to create a common language, a shared blueprint to really boost critical thinking in schools. What they came up with was a taxonomy, which, is really just a fancy word for a classification system. The whole idea was to sort and categorize different learning goals, to push education past simple memorization and get students to those higher levels of thinking. So the team broke learning down into three big buckets. You've got the affective domain, which is all about our emotions, feelings, and attitudes. Then there's the psychomotor domain. That's all your physical skills. Think about learning to ride a bike or play the piano. But the one that became super famous, the one that really became a cornerstone of modern education, is the cognitive domain. That's the world of thinking, of knowing, of problem solving, and that's exactly what we're going to focus on. So in 1956, the team published their framework for that cognitive domain, and it pretty much took the education world by storm because it gave everyone this incredibly simple and powerful visual, a pyramid of thinking. And here it is, the OG pyramid. Now, it's set up as a really strict hierarchy. The belief behind it was that learning is kind of like building a house. You absolutely have to pour a solid foundation of basic facts before you can even think about building the more complex, creative stuff on top. This pyramid basically laid out a 6-step journey for your brain. You start at the very bottom with raw knowledge. We're talking memorizing dates, names, formulas. Then you climb up to comprehension, where you can actually explain the why behind those facts. Next is application, where you can take what you know and use it to solve a new problem. Then you get to the top 3, the heavy hitters of critical thinking. Analysis, where you can break ideas down. Synthesis, where you can connect different ideas to form a new one. And finally, at the very top, evaluation, where you can make and defend a judgment. But hey, like any good idea, it didn't just sit there dothering dust. Decades of research and real-world classroom experience started to show there was, a little room for improvement. The world had changed a lot since the 1950s, and the taxonomy needed an update to keep up. So, fast forward to 2001. A team led by one of Bloom's own former students, Lauren Anderson, they published a revised version. And when you look at them side by side like this, you can see the evolution right away. The basic pyramid idea is still there, but the language and even the priorities, they started to change. Okay, one of the biggest changes seems tiny, but it had huge implications. They changed all the levels from static nouns to action-oriented verbs. Think about it. Learning wasn't just the state of having knowledge, it was the active process of remembering. This made the whole framework feel so much more dynamic and way more useful for teachers trying to design actual assignments for their students. But the biggest shakeup happened at the very top of the pyramid. The old level, synthesis, was completely rethought. It became create, and they moved it to the absolute peak, even bumping evaluate down a notch. Now, this was a massive philosophical shift. It basically said that the highest form of thinking isn't just making a judgment about someone else's work. The ultimate goal is to produce something new yourself. So this all sounds great in theory, right? But what does it actually look like when the rubber meets the road? Let's take a look at how this framework actually gets used out there in the real world. Well, educators use those action verbs to write crystal clear learning objectives. This example from Clemson University is just perfect. See how it uses the verb analyze? It tells students exactly what they need to be able to do. It's not about just knowing art history. It's about actively taking apart a piece of art to understand it. And this is how teachers can craft way more powerful questions. Instead of just asking a basic remembering question like, what year was the battle? They can design prompts that push students up the pyramid. An analyze question forces you to find hidden connections. A create question challenges you to imagine totally new possibilities. See the difference? And this isn't just for old school classrooms. In the world of online courses and e-learning, instructional designers lean on Bloom's taxonomy all the time. They use it to structure entire courses, making sure that learners are guided from just remembering information to actually applying it in virtual labs, and eventually to creating real solutions to real problems. Okay, so for all of its influence, and it has been massively influential, Bloom's taxonomy isn't perfect. Not by a long shot. In fact, for decades now, critics have been pointing out some pretty serious cracks in that pyramid's foundation. The main question the critics keep asking is this: is this how our brains really learn? In this clean, neat, step-by-step ladder? Or is the truth of it all a little more messy? Right. The pyramid makes it seem like learning is a ladder. You simply can't get to the fourth rung until you've stood on the third. But a lot of modern cognitive science suggests learning is much more like a web. We make connections all over the place, in every direction. Sometimes the very act of trying to create something is what helps us finally understand a basic concept we were stuck on. It's not always a one-way street. And believe me, the critiques are widespread. Just look at this chart. It shows how deep and varied the debate really is. You've got people questioning the whole structure, asking if these levels are even truly separate things. And you have others who worry about how it's used or misused in classrooms. The point is, this isn't some minor academic squabble. It's a rich, complex conversation that's been going on for a long, long time. So let's just boil down the biggest criticisms. First, it oversimplifies how complex our thinking really is. Second, there's no solid scientific research that proves this strict step-by-step hierarchy actually exists in our brains. Third, you have to remember, this model was born in the 1950s, way before modern neuroscience gave us a window into the brain. And maybe the most dangerous critique is that it's often misinterpreted, leading some to think that remembering facts is a low-level or less important skill, when really, you can't do any critical thinking without a solid foundation of knowledge to think about. So, after all that, where does that leave us? Well, the general feeling is this. Bloom's taxonomy is probably not a perfect, scientifically proven model of how the mind works, but that's okay. Its real power, its enduring legacy, is that it's a practical, easy-to-use tool. It's a constant, powerful reminder for educators everywhere to design lessons that challenge students to go beyond just spitting back facts and to engage in real, authentic, critical thinking. And that kind of leaves us with one final big question to chew on. If that neat and tidy pyramid is a bit of an oversimplification, what's next? As we learn more and more about our amazing brains, what new models, what new frameworks will pop up to guide the future of education? Now that is a question worth thinking about.